What is up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. Today we're getting into my February 24th Bracketology Predictions. Only one more day, and then we got the ASUN Conference and the Sun Belt Conference all finishing up the regular season. So tomorrow I'm going to be coming out with my conference tournament predictions for those two conferences, and stay tuned for even more along the way. I mean, we are getting so close to March Madness. It is going to be hype. I'm so excited for the full bracket, but yeah, I mean, let's look at Joe Lendardi's latest bracketology. Here at the Bracket Watch, we got the top overall seed, Gonzaga, obviously with the situation with Miller. If Miller's out, this Alabama team's not nearly as good. He scored 43 points against Boston College, where Alabama nearly lost that game. That was a crazy game, but Alabama barely got the win. But obviously Miller, with those allegations of the gun handling with him, definitely a serious situation. We'll see if he can stay. But yeah, I mean, obviously Alabama needs him because he's playing really good as a freshman this season. And Bama would not be the same team without him. Here we got the first team out, Penn State getting a big win over Ohio State, I believe. And then the last team in, we got Mississippi State. If we look at the bubble here, last four buys, we got Pittsburgh, Nevada, Memphis, and then West Virginia. And then the last four in, we got Oklahoma State, who continue to slide here. USC, Wisconsin, getting a big win. I believe against who was it against? I'm not sure, guys. Let me just search this up real quick. It's just slipping my mind right now. It was against Iowa. Big win against Iowa. And then we got Mississippi State. And then Penn State on the first front. We got Penn State, Utah State, North Carolina barely surviving against Notre Dame. That would have been a huge blow. I heard a stat. There's never been a preseason number one miss the tournament. North Carolina would be the first one here. They are in the first four out. That would be horrible. They're 0-9 against quad one opponents. That's bad for their resume. So North Carolina's in a pickle right now. They need some help because the ACC is not at its strongest this season. They're going to need to play well for the rest of the stretch. And then we got Charleston. And then the next front, Texas Tech, continuing to jump up. I do believe they beat Oklahoma State. I'm not sure, though. And then Clemson, Michigan, finding their ways into this field. And then New Mexico taking a big loss to Boise State. They needed that game, and New Mexico's not looking good. They're going to need to go on a run in the Mountain West tournament. All right, but let's look at the full-on bracket here. Starting out with the first four games, Oklahoma State's going to be dropping down to an 11 seed. And that's it for that movement there. And then in the South region, Alabama, as I mentioned, the number one seed, just barely beating Boston College. Houston would, I think, be the number one seed if they lost that game. And then jumping up a spot here, we got Nevada. Xavier's going to be dropping down to a 5 seed. Marshall, new to the field, at a 12 seed. Miami going to be jumping up to a 4 seed. And then we got Hofstra jumping up to a 13 seed. Texas A&M getting that huge win against Tennessee, just playing excellent in the SEC right now, going to be jumping up to a 6 seed. Then we got Florida Atlantic dropping down to an 11 seed, and Baylor dropping down to a 3 seed. In the Midwest region, Houston obviously continuing to dominate in the AAC conference. Indiana dropping down to the 5 seed. They took a tough loss to Michigan State. And then Iowa State going to be dropping down to 4 seed. Just haven't played as good as earlier. I was really a big fan of Iowa State, but taking some tough losses here lately. And then we got Marquette going to be jumping up to a 3 seed, and then Toledo going to be new to the field at a 14 seed, and Duke dropping down to a 7 seed. And then here in the West region here, Kansas going to be jumping up to the 1 seed. Or not jumping up, the number 1 seed, just continuing to play dominant basketball in the Big 12. Arkansas going to be jumping up to an 8 seed, and then Illinois, not sure why they're falling here. They were a 7 seed. This is interesting here, to say the least. They beat Northwestern. Yeah, big win for them, comeback win. I really don't know why they're dropping down here, but I guess Lendardi, something happened. Maybe a player got injured. I'm not fully into that right now, but we'll see. whatever's going on there. And then UConn going to be jumping up to a 4 seed, and Gonzaga jumping up to a 3 seed. And then in the East region here, we got Purdue as the number 1 overall seed. Right there, kind of bouncing back, playing good. And then Virginia taking a very bad loss. Sorry, if I said Alabama lost to Boston College, it was South Carolina. That's who. Sorry about that. South Carolina, the Gamecocks. Virginia was the one that lost to Boston College. So Alabama, sorry, let me regroup. Alabama barely beat South Carolina in overtime. And then Virginia lost to Boston College. Big win for Boston College there. But Virginia, I'm not a big fan of Virginia right now. They continue to lose some of these games. Not the hugest fan. And then also, Boise State, I think, should be jumping up here. Boise State got a big win against, as I mentioned earlier, New Mexico. And then Kansas State getting a big-time win against Baylor to jump up to the 2 line. All right, but let's look at the full-on bracket here now. Starting out with the first 4 games here. Oops. That is not supposed to be there, my bad. All right. No, okay. Having a little bit of technical difficulties here. Okay, now. Oklahoma State versus USC. I'm going to go with Oklahoma State, though, to win that one. Although that's a close matchup. And then Fairleigh Dickinson versus Howard. I'm going with Fairleigh Dickinson. Mississippi State, I think, could beat Wisconsin. Another close game, though. And then Alcorn State versus Morehead State. I'm going with the Morehead State there. So let's look at the full round of 64 here. Starting with Alabama against Fairleigh Dickinson. I'm going with the Crimson Tide. Iowa against Nevada. I really like Nevada a lot as a 9 seed. I'm going with them to beat Iowa. And then Xavier versus Marshall. I really want to go with an upset pick here. You know what? Let's do it. Let's go with the 12 seed Marshall, a good team out of the MAC conference. I'm not a big fan of Xavier. I think that they could be upset in this tournament. So let's go with Marshall. Why not go with some fun there, pulling off the win. And then Miami, I do think could beat Hofstra. Florida Atlantic, really good 11th seed, but I just don't think it's going to be enough against Texas A&M, who's playing too good. And then Baylor, I think could beat UC Irvine. Providence against Memphis. I'm going to go with the 7-seeded Providence there, as well as Arizona beating Youngstown State. All right, down here we got Purdue pulling off the win over Morehead State. Kentucky, I think, can hold off Boise State. Creighton, I think, could beat VCU, as well as Utah Valley pulling up the 13 over the 4 upset here. Virginia, tough loss. I'm just not a big fan of Virginia. I'm going to be straight up honest. I like Utah Valley as a team as a 13 seed. I think that they could beat Virginia. So let's go with a big-time upset there. San Diego State against West Virginia. Yeah, I just think that San Diego State's the better team there. I think that they'll win. And then Tennessee, I do think it'd be Eastern Washington. Michigan State, I think, will hold off Pittsburgh, as well as Kansas State beating Vermont. So we've had 2 big upsets, but nothing really else besides a 9 seed. All right, let's go over here, though. Houston, I do think it'd be UNC Asheville. NC State against Rutgers. I'm going to go with NC State in that game. I really do like Oral Roberts as a team against Indiana. I'm a big believer in Indiana this season. I'm going with Indiana. And then Iowa State, I think it beat Yale. Northwestern, I think, could beat Oklahoma State, as well as Marquette, pulling off the win over Toledo. Then I'm going to go with a 10 over 7 upset here. Let's go with Missouri to beat Duke. Duke's a good team, but Missouri, I just like them a little bit more right now. I'm a big fan of Missouri. And then Texas, I think, could beat Kennesaw State. All right, down here, Kansas against Texas A&M Corpus Christi. I'm going to have to go with Kansas in that game. Illinois, I think, could beat Arkansas, although those are 2 good teams there. And then I'm going to go with an upset picker. Let's go with Drake or... Yeah, let's go with Drake. Let's go with the 12-seed upset here. I like Drake as a team here. A good team. And St. Mary's, congratulations to them. They just clinched at least a share of the regular season conference title in the West Coast Conference, but I do think that they're vulnerable as a 5 seed, and Drake, I think, is a good team to pull off an upset. Connecticut, I do think, can beat Iona, though, and then TCU versus Mississippi State. I just don't see the 11 seed pulling off the win there. I'm going with TCU. Gonzaga, I do think it beat Colgate. And then Maryland, I think it beat Auburn, as well as UCLA beating Stanford. So we had two 12-seed upsets, but no 11-seed upsets. Just how it worked out this time. I don't see any of these 6 seeds going down. So, all right, but let's go over here for a spot in the Sweet 16. I did have these two in the matchup last time in the Elite Eight, as Nevada was an 11th seed, made a big run. But, just how it played out this time, a 9 seed. It's just all about matchups in the conference, in the March Madness tournament here. And I just don't see Nevada pulling off that win, especially if Miller's playing. If Brandon Miller's not playing, I think that Nevada will win this game, but with the charges. But if he's playing, I just don't think it'll be enough there. And then Miami, I do think can beat Marshall in that game. Texas A&M against Baylor. Let's go with a 6-3 upset here. Baylor's kind of been iffy over the past couple games here. I do like Baylor a lot, but Texas A&M, I also like them a lot. They're playing really good basketball right now, so I'm going to go with the Texas A&M to pull off the upset. And then Arizona, I do think it beat Providence in that game. All right, down here, Purdue against Kentucky. I'm going with the Boilermakers there. You know what? Never mind. Let's have some fun with it. Let's go with an 8-seed Kentucky pulling off the win. Purdue, obviously a dominant team there. What am I? Yeah, let's do it. Let's keep it. Have some fun with it. Kentucky, really good team. I picked Purdue last time. And usually there's a 1 seed that goes down in the round of 32. I think it could be Purdue. So, let's have some fun. Purdue going down early. And then Creighton, I do think can beat Utah Valley in that game. San Diego State against Tennessee. I'm going with the Tennessee. I do think could be upset, but against San Diego State, I don't think it happens there. And then Kansas State, I do think it beat Michigan State. All right, over here, Houston against NC State. I'm going with the Cougars there in that game. And then Indiana, I think, can pull off the 5-4 upset there to beat Iowa State. Northwestern, I think, can pull off a 6-3 upset here. Marquette, good team. I'm just not the biggest fan of them. And Northwestern is a good team out of the Big Ten, playing good lately, even though they just lost to Illinois. Texas against Missouri. I'm going with the Longhorns in that game to beat. As much as I would want to see Missouri winning, I'm going with the Longhorns, though. And then Kansas against Illinois. Down here, we got Kansas pulling off the win. UConn, I think, could beat Drake in that game. You know what? Never mind. Let's go with Drake. Let's have a Cinderella story here. The Bulldogs pulling off the upset over the Huskies. Drake, good team. UConn, also a good team, but I just don't think it's going to be enough in that one. And then Gonzaga against TCU. I'm going to go with... do we have another 3-seed go down? Let's do it. TCU, the Horned Frogs, pulling off the upset. Gonzaga is a good team. Don't get me wrong, but we're going to have another 3-seed going down here in this tournament. TCU, really good team. Let's do it. And then UCLA against Maryland. I'm going to go with a big upset pick here. Let's go with the 7-seeded Terps of Maryland beating UCLA. I know UCLA, a really good team. A lot of people like them, but I just don't have a good feeling about UCLA. I think that they're the weakest 2-seed of all of them. And I think that Maryland, really freaking good 7th seed. I think that they could pull off an upset. So this region, we have a 1-seed, 12-seed, a 6-seed, and a 7-seed craziness going on in the, not sure what region this is, but the bottom right. All right, so for a spot in the Elite Eight, we got Alabama, we got Miami. I'm going with the Crimson Tide. And then Texas A&M versus Arizona. As much as I want to see Texas A&M go to the Elite Eight, Arizona's too good of a team. I'm going with Arizona. Kentucky versus Creighton here. A 5 versus an 8 seed. I'm going to go with Kentucky. The Wildcats, scary 8 seed, honestly, right now. I think that they can win that game. And then we got Kansas State versus Tennessee. I'm going to go with the Wildcats of Kansas State. All right, over here, We got Houston. We got Indiana. I'm gonna go with a 5-1 upset here. Pick here, Houston. I just don't. I haven't even picked them in the Elite Eight. I'm just not the biggest fan of Houston right now. And Indiana, really good 5 seed, even though they just lost to Michigan State. I still have faith in that program there. I think that they can pull off the win. And then Texas versus Northwestern. I'm going to go with the Longhorns there to pull off the win. And then down here, Kansas will end Drake's Cinderella run there to pull off the win. And then TCU versus Maryland, a 7 versus a 6 seed. I'm going to go with the Terps. Let's go with Maryland to pull off the win over TCU. All right, so for a spot in the Final Four, we got Alabama, we got Arizona. Two really good teams, but I'm going to go with the 2 seed Arizona. I do believe we had this. Oh, wait, no, that was down there. But Arizona, I think, can pull off the win over Alabama. Alabama, obviously, really good team, but they did almost lose to South Carolina last game. I like Arizona a lot. Let's put them back in the Final Four there. And then Kentucky versus Kansas State, as much as I would want to see. Well, actually not. I'm not a big fan of Kentucky, as obviously they've had a lot of success, but let's give Kansas State the run that they deserve, a 2 seed to the Final Four. Then we got Indiana and Texas. All right, this is a tough matchup here. I'm going to go with the 5-seeded Indiana. Let's bring them to the Final Four. Good team. I know they just lost, but let's bring them. Texas, I think we'll lose that game. And then we got Kansas versus Maryland. As much as I want to see the 7-seeded Terps, I just can't pick against Kansas right there. So I'm going to go with Kansas. All right, so we got the Final Four teams. We got two seeds in Arizona and Kansas State, and then we got a 5 seed in Indiana and a 1 seed in Kansas. So for a spot in the national championship game, Arizona versus Kansas State. Tough game to predict, but I'm gonna go with the Wildcats of Arizona to pull off the win. I just don't see Kansas, 2 Wildcat teams, I believe, right there. But Arizona, I think, can win that game. And then Indiana versus Kansas. Let's flip it up. Let's go with the Indiana Hoosiers to pull off a big upset over Kansas. Kansas was my national champion last time, but let's flip it up. Indiana pulling off the win. And then we got Arizona and Indiana. And I like the Wildcats of Arizona to pull off the win and win the national championship. So a little bit more of a sloppy bracketology here, guys, but hope you all enjoyed the content. Arizona's your national champion. Comment down below your predictions. And anyway, peace.